Clariphiles and Clariphiles. In the past several videos, we've been stressing reed adjustment, how to adjust reeds, how to test reeds. Not so much that, but anyway, how to adjust reeds. And I've tried to demonstrate things about how a reed should feel and on that's going to optimize your ability to play correctly behind your nose. It's very important to be able to do that. If you're playing reeds that are acoustically unbalanced, then the response is going to be poor. It's going to be uneven somewhere in the register or ranges of the clarinet, and the reed's not going to play for you correctly, and you're going to have to force it, and that's going to compromise your tone production. And this basically keeps your tone production mechanics behind your nose in a constant state of flux because they're adjusting to reeds that are wildly unbalanced and different one to another. And they all make you play inefficiently, and they make you play with a lot more effort, a lot more struggle, and a lot more frustration than you should have if you're playing a really beautifully balanced reeds. I don't have to prove that to you. You prove it to yourself, just remembering when you've finally got one of those few reeds that really play great, and how much that freed you, how happy you were playing, how you felt like that playing the clarinet you were playing with a friend instead of someone who's resisting your every effort. Okay? So the question is, why are reeds so variable? Why do reeds play so differently? Well, the common stock answer to that has always been, well, the cane's just not very good, And just every once in a while you find a really great piece of cane. And I can tell you right now, that is complete baloney. Okay, and that's to put it politely. So many reeds are bad, not because the cane is bad, but because the cut, the finish is bad. Now, this is not to defame any of the reed manufacturers at all. They have basically an impossible job. You're facing mouthpieces made in all kinds of different ways with all kinds of different facing curves and all kinds of different resistances. And it's a very difficult task. You're not going to be able to find a reed manufacturer that's going to be able to make everything work for you. You're going to have to adjust your reeds so that they will play efficiently, so that you can stabilize and make consistent your playing mechanics. But let's go back to the question, though. Why are reeds so variable? Okay, I maintain that it's not cane, that in the vast majority of the cases, it's because the cuts are so variable. And I'm going to share a story with you. When I was at LeBlanc Corporation, I was, in the woodwind department there, and I was in charge of clarinet design and mouthpiece design. And also, I did a lot of quality control on products, especially products that were third-party products. Now, what do I mean by that? A third-party product is a product that your manufacturer doesn't really make, but they purchase it from another maker and then sell it. So that's a third-party. You're selling a third-party product. And we did sell a third-party product for reeds. And it was French cane, and everything looked good, but the reeds really played poorly, and we didn't sell very many of them. And I had a lot of players that I talked to, professionals, they complained about the reeds, and I tested through the reeds, and I noticed something really remarkable, is that not only did they play badly, they all played badly in the same way. They were all unbalanced, albeit to different degrees, but they're all unbalanced in the same way. What does that tell you logically? It tells you if they can be unbalanced in the same way, they can be balanced in the same way. And it wasn't that all the cane was bad in the same way. It was they were all cut in the same way. And if you change the cut, then you make the reed play consistently correctly instead of consistently badly. Are you following me? Okay. So, as ironies would have it, I had a chance to actually test this out, and I haven't had reed problems since about 1978. Okay, that's a long time. But it was because I devoted a lot of time to figuring out what reed balance was and how to do it and a test for it. And that's shared in my ATG reed finishing system. It's not just tools, it's an entire education that you have there in a DVD. But now let's not get sidetracked from our story. So I was going to the Frankfurt Musikmesse, which is a huge music fair that's held in Frankfurt, Germany, I think around February it has been. So I was going there, and I contracted this reed manufacturer, which is down on the Riviera, right on the shores of the Mediterranean. And they were more than willing for me to come in and take a look at what they were doing and see if I could make them play better, make the reeds play better. And so I left for Europe a week early with Andres Cruciatus, and Andres was our translator. He was fluent in French, and my French is a little shaky. It's just clarinet French. So I was glad to have Andres along, and he was good company. So anyway, we arrived at the manufacturer, and I asked them if they would let me test some reeds. They were happy to do that. I tested the reeds, and sure enough, they were unbalanced, all in the same way, very badly balanced in the same way of the reeds that they've been supplying to us. Well, then I found out why they were all unbalanced in the same way. And it is because they only had one machine, one clarinet machine. There's a small manufacturer. Now, other manufacturers that are big manufacturers, they want to make the reeds good, but they also want to make money more than they want to make the reeds as perfect as possible. So how many machines do they have? Sometimes 30, 35 machines. And all these machines are slightly differently adjusted. Or they would say slightly differently. So the measurements are very slight. But the fact is that you have, say, 30 reed machines, and the reeds are all pouring down into one bin, and they're all measured by a laser, not side to side, but just measured by a laser set. That's a number 4, laser set, that's a number 3, that's a number 2, and so on and so forth. And then they're boxed. So the reeds you have may be from that manufacturer. Every reed in the box comes from a different machine. And they're all, variably adjusted, so the reeds don't play. But they don't play in all kinds of different ways. So it was kind of remarkable that this manufacturer was making reeds that were wrong all in the same way. And it was because they only had one machine, not 30 machines. So I spent 2 days at that manufacturer, and I tested reeds, and the people adjusting the machine, I would tell them what was wrong, and they would go back and adjust, and then they would give me another batch of reeds to test, and then they would rinse and repeat, so to speak. So we did that about 4 or 5 times. On the second day, about mid-afternoon, they delivered to me a box or a pallet of reeds that were about 30 reeds, and I tested them, and one was unbalanced. The rest of them were beautifully balanced, and I didn't look a gift horse in the mouth. I said, "This is what you need to be producing for us, that we can sell." And sure enough, when we returned from Frankfurt from the Musikmesse, I got back to Kenosha, and we got a new supply of reeds from this manufacturer. And I went in, I pulled 3 or 4 different boxes of different strengths. Sure enough, they were all beautiful. I mean, they played beautifully balanced, symmetrical. It's going to fit 95% of the mouthpieces that people play. People that play crooked mouthpieces, there's no telling. There's no hope for people who do that. They can struggle all their life under the illusion that crooked rails is somehow better. But In any case, a symmetrically balanced reed and a symmetrical mouthpiece is going to yield you the most reed-friendly reeds coming out of the box than you can imagine. And I proved that. I proved that with this manufacturer. I got other players to play it, and they were knocked out at how good the reeds were, and they began purchasing them. And that went on for close to a year. And then I was leaving LeBlanc. I was coming to Texas, or coming back home to the South, which is where I always wanted to be. And I'd given them my notice. And sure enough, we got another supply of reeds from that manufacturer. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll just go in and test them, see what they've got. And I tested the reeds, and it was like, I was opening the boxes looking for Dr. Jekyll, and out jumps Mr. Hyde. The reeds were terrible. They were all over the place in terms of balance, worse maybe than originally. So I called them. I said, look, this batch of reeds, they're completely wacko. They don't play anything like what you've been supplying us for almost a year. And they said, well, we had to replace some parts in the machinery. And so that's what we did. We had the cutters replaced and so on and so forth. So they had to make adjustments just because of the routine kind of wear that you have in machines, especially machines that are doing cutting. So then when they reassembled things, they didn't get it back to the way it was. And so I wasn't about to go back to Europe. Nobody was going to send me back to Europe to help them reset up the machine. And then I left LeBlanc, and that's basically the end of the story. So I want you to think about this, okay? Think about the implications of that story. That reeds are so bad not because of the cane, but because of the cut. Almost all the machines, say the 30 machines of a big manufacturer, they're all adjusted slightly differently, with the cutters wearing in a different way, and so on and so forth. And they all look like reeds. And they're analyzing them just through laser, just through density of cane, not by a side-to-side comparison, left to right ear. So they don't even analyze them in terms of the imbalance. They think that, say, a 1,000th difference between the measuring of one batch of reeds that comes from one machine and another machine is, well, that's just a very small amount of thickness, right? But the differences are enough to actually take the reed from a range of unplayable to very good. It's not a little bit in effect. So you can't really gauge how consistent reeds are through measurement. You have to gauge through the effect of those differences in measurement. And the effect is catastrophic in many cases. You take one machine produces unplayable reeds, terribly balanced. Another machine produces sort of decent reeds, sort of playable reeds. Something you can live with if you're used to compromising everything you have behind your nose to make the thing work. And yet the measurements seem, that's a very small difference there. It makes an enormous amount of difference when you're dealing with reed response and all that. So here's the thing, is that when these are the conditions that the reed manufacturers operate under, and of necessity, these are the conditions, then how are you going to ever develop any kind of consistency behind your nose when you're playing? Because every time you put on a different reed, it's not just different, but it's really different, okay? And so most people end up paying a lot of money for a lot of reeds that they can't use. I mean, how many of you sitting out there have, unless you've been enraged and just decided to break everything that didn't work, how many of you got, a desk with boxes of reeds that you can't play. And that's money thrown away. What's more, you've got potentially in those boxes some really great reeds, as I proved a couple videos ago, taking these different reeds and making them all work. So it's really important for you to spend some time developing the skills, not just to save money, skills to work on reeds, not just to save money, but to get your reeds to play much more consistently so that you can develop more consistently. Look, this is the beauty of playing the trumpet or the trombone or playing the flute, is that they don't have this variable of the reed to worry about. So they can develop, and they develop on a consistent line. Every morning they approach their instrument. It's, by comparison, almost identical to what we had to put up with as clarinet players. It's a very frustrating thing. And the reed manufacturers, they supply things that look like reeds, okay? But to me, a reed is not a reed until it actually does some things. It just can't look like a reed. It actually has to play. So this is, you're not going to find your solution with boxes of commercial reeds. You're going to pay a lot of money to be able to use a couple, maybe, and still those are not going to really be ideal like you can balance if you learn the skill. And so this is my case. This is my story. I'm sticking to it. You must learn how to test and how to find balanced reeds if you're ever going to get any consistency in your playing and be able to escape the kind of frustrations and struggles that I saw many talented musicians, many talented teachers go through because they were unable, for whatever reasons, to be able to learn to adjust the reeds. And it was always a torture. They got to play a concert, they got to play a solo, and they're just scrambling for a reed. So this is my message to you. You have to learn how to balance reeds and to test reeds and to do it with refinement and sensitivity if you're going to ever be able to stabilize your approach to playing mechanics behind your nose. Otherwise, your playing is always going to be uneven and you're always going to be in a state of frustration. And you have to practice the reed testing and a reed finishing just like you practice anything else, just like you practice a solo you're going to play or a piece you're going to play with an orchestra or a band. You've got to spend the time to do it. And believe me, it will pay dividends to you your whole life because you won't be frustrated like other players. I recall several years ago I was going to go to Utah or Wyoming or someplace like that to give a presentation on reed finishing, and the guy asked me if I wanted to play. So I decided I would play the C clarinet and play the Mozart oboe quartet, which I did. And I was coming from Dallas, going up to 7,000 feet, and there were other players that were local teachers and players that were coming from 6,000, 5,000 feet into this place that was at 7,000 altitude, and they were all frustrated because the reeds, it was playing when I left, Butte, Montana or whatever, but now it's not. What I did is I just pulled out my reeds, and I had about 10 reeds with me, something like that, and I played 7 of them played great, and my frustration was to find which one would play best, and that was going from Dallas all the way up to 7th, but I didn't have any trouble because my reeds were balanced in the first place. Unbalanced reeds vary much more in terms of altitude and weather and all that stuff than a well-balanced reed. So especially if you travel, you're going to be in much better shape if you learn how to balance your reeds because they're going to play consistently. I used to travel at LeBlanc. I would go from Florida to California, back up to Wisconsin and over to the East Coast, all playing the same reeds, and they all played very well and very consistently. So look, all kinds of advantages, but you have to spend the time to do it. And I really highly recommend my reed finishing system. It gives you a full education on how to test and how to balance reeds, and it also gives you the tools that are just it's the easiest way to balance reeds that I've ever seen. I sold my machines because the reed finishing system is better. The reed tools, I don't know where they are anyway. The tools that I use, and they're simple. You can carry them. You don't need great light or anything. All you need to do is to use the tools and to learn how to test, and you know how to adjust those reeds, and you'll never be without great reeds. I can guarantee you that. Okay? So this is my pitch for my reed finishing system, not because that I, just want to make the money. That money's always nice, but because I want to help you and help you gain confidence that you can make your reeds better and that you can actually use what you pay for. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and I've got good reasons for it. Thanks for watching.